green, so I guess we're good.
Or just power.
Just power. Yeah, I went green, so yeah, I think we're telling everybody on the line we're green. So this morning we're on the second lesson in this series of lessons Dickie started last week, starting with When Life Feels Empty, which is a great way to start a series of lessons. I know Dickie was excited about teaching a lesson that was going to talk about how empty life was. So I got tickled listening to your lesson last week, by the way, you're talking about that. But this week, talking about, and continuing on with this, we're talking about the problem with pleasure. So, you know, more excitement, right? About, okay, now we can't have fun either on this. That's not going to be what the lesson's about, but something I want you to think about as we go into this. Now, you don't have to answer this, but just something to kind of consider as we go through the lesson, is what would you do as a splurge if you won the lottery? If you won the multi-million-dollar lottery or whatever, what would you go spend that money on? And you don't have to answer that right now, just something to kind of ponder as we go through the lesson. And it may I hope by the end of the lesson we change the thought process of how we would go through that. Because if you're like me, when I first think about that, you know, I go right down the road of car, paying off this, paying off that, whatever it may be, you know, the whole list of things that I want to look at. But if we look at this, is there a problem with having pleasure in our lives?
No.
I think God wants us to have fun. He wants us to have a good time, don't he? So if you look at this lesson, then why are we worried about pleasure in our life, having a good time in our life? And we're going to be in Ecclesiastes again this morning, which I love Ecclesiastes because it's kind of Solomon's way of being a parent to us. You know, if you think about, as parents, we try to guide our kids and give them our wisdom as much as we think we have anyway, about don't make the same mistakes we made. We try to instruct them to, you know, even friends, you know, whatever it may be. If we've experienced something in life, we try to pass that along to others. And that's kind of what Solomon does through Ecclesiastes, is giving us a lot of words of wisdom about, here's some things I did good, and here's some things I did not so good. That you need to learn from or can learn from and apply to your life before we step in the same potholes. Now, typically as Christians, we're really good about stepping in the same potholes that our mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers and so on did, even back to the children of Israel. We're pretty good about stepping in the same potholes as they did. Y'all hot back there? You can have Paul open that window. Don't open that. Linda's going to turn on the air conditioner or have somebody check on it. So, you know, if you think about it, we like to have things that make us feel happy. And it's just part of life, right? And the problem is we confuse happiness and joy many times. But what are some problems with getting things to make us happy?
It doesn't last long.
Yes. Short-lived usually, isn't it? What do we do then?
Look for something else to make us happy.
That's right. Yeah, we want that happy feeling again, right? So, you know, you buy a new car, everything's great, it's all great until something happens that acts funny going up the road, or you pull into a parking lot, somebody opens up the door and your whole vehicle does this when it hits it, and you think, great, there's the, you know, it's not worth anything now, I need to go sell it. Because now it's just no car. I need something new again. But it doesn't take us long, does it? Things wear on us pretty quickly. When we're talking about stuff, the things we buy we think is going to add happiness to us, a lot of times will even cause other issues, right? What happens, what kind of stories have you heard about people who have won the lottery and come into this windfall of money all of a sudden years later?
Their life falls apart.
Yeah. Life's falling apart, they're broke. You know, they found out they had relatives that they never heard from that all of a sudden showed up. They got friends that are, you know, friends that they never knew before that all of a sudden is their best friend. So all these things occur, don't they? That, you know, I thought several times, boy, it'd be nice to have, you know, it's going to be Immaculate Conception or whatever if I win the lottery, because I don't play lottery. So somebody's going to have to drop a ticket off my house or something like that. If it wins, you know, I may share it with them, may not. But, you know, I thought about that several times, and I thought, you know, that'd be really cool. Because you think, oh, I'd make sure, I gave this to church, and I'd make sure the kids were taken care of, and the parents, and da-da-da, and go this whole list of who all I'd take care of, thinking, Lord, if that's helping, give me some points here. Maybe you'll give this to me. And I figured out that the Lord don't want me to be rich, because He knows I couldn't handle it. That's the only reason I can figure I'm still where I'm at. But there's so many issues that come with things that we think, and again, this goes back to our thought process, will make us happy. I heard the air cut on. That's a good thing. I hope it's not heat. I hope it's air. So if you look at the definition of happiness with the world, what does that look like? What does the world say will make you happy?
More stuff.
More stuff. Yeah, it may be maybe alcohol. I mean, if you watch any sporting events, there's never a beer commercial that looks bad. It's usually there, come on. It never they never show the after effects of someone drinking. They show, you're going to have a good time if you do this. It's all going to be great. And you come in and you walk into a bar and everybody knows you and they all welcome you in and you have a sing along and everybody knows how to dance together and all this kind of stuff happens when that happens. They sell us on these things, and it could be. It's not just that. It's things you buy, things you may Back years ago, of course, now the smoking is kind of taboo, right? So, but back years ago, if you all remember, the commercials for smoking was really cool. You sit there and you had your cigarette up here, and you looked all, and that didn't look cool. I know. They look cool when they did it. But these things make us think that's where we need to go. If I want to be happy and I want to be successful in this world, here's the things I need to look like. Here's what I need to do to have that appearance of being successful and happy. The problem is, and that's what we're going to get into this morning, is what happens when it doesn't make you happy anymore. What happens at night when you lay down and those things are hollow. Now, and what we see, I think, in today's society is a very self-serving society. We're self-promoting. We're taught this in school, right? As we go through school, and our parents, and as parents, I know we did this. We try to encourage our girls to be able to stand on their own and go out. You got to really work to get these things done and be successful and and we try to ingrain God in the middle of that, but the world doesn't do that, do they? The world says you got to be successful. If you have to step over other people to do it, that's fine. Just be successful. And whatever you have to do to get more money to buy the things you want to buy to make you look successful is what you need to do. And that's what we are living in, a society that's bound that way. It's hard for us as Christians to live outside of it. It's hard for us not to get caught up in that same game that the world is caught up in, that I gotta have to be successful. Instead of looking to God to give us that peace and that joy that we're really looking for. I pulled some numbers I thought was interesting and sad at the same time. When I was looking through this lesson, I went out to the Center for Addiction for the United States. It says 40 million of Americans aged 12 and older are addicted to either alcohol, drugs, tobacco. I think that was the three biggies. There were some other small things there in it, but that's 1 in 7 people have an addiction today. And that's one of the problems we have with looking for happiness in things, isn't it? It may be something that looks like it's going to be what we need to make us happy initially, but all of a sudden it becomes our God. It owns us because we have let it take control of our lives. And, anytime, I've always heard this, too much of a good thing is still too much, right? Even good things can consume us to the point that we're not able to worship God. It becomes our God. And Scott, not to shoot down your advertisement, I do want to encourage you to serve when you have a place to, but we can even let, I say good things get in the way. Can church get in the way of you worshiping God? It can. We can get so busy that on Sunday mornings you come in and say, when I get to church, I got to and you go down this list and you think, I didn't have time to worship today. I had been gone doing so many other things during church that I forgot to worship when I was there. Same thing on Sunday nights or Wednesday nights. It can happen. Certainly, I think we should be busy about doing God's work. But I think we should be very prayerful about what God wants us to do and not just say yes to everything that everybody asks for. Because if you do that, I'll promise you in this church, you will get very busy because you'll be asked to do a lot of things. Be very prayerful and look for God's guidance in everything we do. And that's what we're going to kind of get the crux of this lesson to kind of give you the end before the beginning, is that we've got to seek God's will in our lives for things we do and the things we have and the way we approach things. And it will change the way we view life. In fact, God still wants us to have life and have it more abundantly. But we have to be measured in what we do. We have to be thoughtful in what we do and make sure we still have God first in our lives. Now, again, I said we're going to be in Ecclesiastes. I think, of course, Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes. He kind of goes through a lot of this. It kind of switches back and forth. So it's kind of weird reading sometimes because it's third person, then it's first person, then it's third person. So he kind of flips back and forth the way it's written. But I really like it because he goes back, and if you look through kind of the layout, you see in chapter 1 he's more searching. Chapter 2 it's more into emptiness. So it's what we're going to look at today. Then he talks about work, death, wisdom, things like that throughout the book. So there's a lot of things he addresses for us to help pass along these bits of wisdom. Now Solomon, in most of his life, was not really strong with his relationship with God. He struggled a lot. Now he was very wise, but he still struggled with his relationship with God and how to do that. So we see that reflected in his writing. Many times it's negative. It's what we don't need to do because of his experience and what he did in his life. And he's realizing as he's getting older, that wasn't what it was all about. I thought it was, but that wasn't really what it was all about. So as we get into this, I won't read all of it but the last verse. And I won't wait and read the last verse as we finish the lesson today. So in Ecclesiastes, we're in chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. It says, I said to myself, go ahead, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy what is good. But it turned out to be futile. I said about laughter, it is madness. And about pleasure, what does this accomplish? I explored with my mind the pool of wine on my body, my mind still guiding me with wisdom, and how to grasp folly until I could see what is good for people to do under heaven during the few days of their lives. I increased my achievements. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks for myself and planted every kind of fruit tree in them. I constructed reservoirs for myself from which to irrigate a grove of flourishing trees. I acquired male and female servants and had slaves who were born in my house. I also owned livestock, large herds and flocks, more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. I also amassed silver and gold for myself, and the treasure of kings and provinces. I gathered male and female singers for myself, and many concubines, the delights of men. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. My wisdom also remained with me. All that my eyes desired, I did not deny them. I did not refuse myself any pleasure, for I took pleasure in all of my struggles. This was my reward for all my struggles. And I'm going to stop there. I'm going to wait and read verse 11 as we finish the lesson today, because it kind of gets down to really what he learned through this. So I think it's interesting when you first get into this section of Scripture, how much the word I is used. He's saying, I said to myself, I will test you, I will do these things. He's talking about himself. And I think he's doing this to let us know this is what he's learned. He's putting himself out there, kind of like we would do with our children, right? If you're talking to someone who's saying, have you done this? Well, here's what I experienced. Here's what I've gone through. Here's things I learned that I want to pass along to you. I think it makes it a very personal note to us that he's trying to get across. Here's some things. Now is he saying, he talks about, if it's said about laughter, it's madness, about pleasure, what does this accomplish? Is he saying we shouldn't be happy? Bless you. Is he saying we shouldn't have laughter in our lives? No. Bible tells us laughter is good for the soul like a medicine. God wants us to have pleasure. He wants us to be happy. The problem that Solomon run into, and we see this all down through there, is if it is empty. And he's talking about, laughing over silly stuff. If you're, you see these people, sometimes it's funny. You can tell it's a made-up laugh. Somebody's laughing about something they they didn't think it's funny, but they're laughing because everybody else is laughing. So it must be funny. So they're going to laugh. Kids especially. Kids are really funny to do that. They'll sit there and you'll see other kids laughing, then all of a sudden a kid that didn't get it, sitting there looking at everybody, and they'll start laughing and stuff. They didn't even know what they're laughing about. They're just laughing because everybody else is laughing, so it's the right thing to do. We still do that as adults. We some things we don't grow out of. But if we are indulging in these things and it's hollow, it's just folly. It's things that don't last. It's empty when you do this. And he goes on into, and we talked about a little bit, the restraint. He's talked about the wine and the pull of wine on his body. There are things in this world that are good, and there are things in this world that are bad for us. Obviously, we see that all around us, and that's what we tend to focus on. But I never have been able to figure out why bad habits are always easy to get into, and good habits are never easy to get into. I never have figured that out. You think, okay, there should be one good habit out there that's good for you, and it draws you close to God, all this stuff, and it's a good habit that's easy to fall into. And they're just, I haven't found, if y'all find one, let me know, because I like to try it out and see what that feels like, because it's so easy to get into bad habits, and it could be our diet, which, I like to eat the things I like to eat, and they're usually not healthy for me. It could be the alcohol, it could be different drugs, it could be watching too much TV, it could be, there's all these things that can pull us into it. But what is the problem if we do it too much? What is the effects of doing anything too much?
It takes away from something else.
Yes. Something always has to suffer, doesn't it? And that's where, if you think back through the last few weeks, where was your time focused? Where did you spend the most time? Was it in God's Word and seeking what He wants? Was it in one particular thing, or was it scattered over so many things? And I know most of y'all like us. I thought when the girls moved out, when our kids moved out, I thought, man, we're going to have all this time to do. No, we're still running like crazy. And I'm thinking, how did we have time for kids when they were home? I don't understand that. I guess we just didn't do anything else, and now all this other stuff's piled up. We waited 20 years to do all these other things now. But it piles up, doesn't it? And we get distracted. And that's what the devil loves, to use things that are not necessarily always bad, but he loves to distract us, doesn't he? We are so easily distracted. And I can tell you, I do this, working on less this week. I'm sitting there reading, and I read. And I realized about halfway through the scripture reading that I was thinking about something totally different than the lesson. And I had to go back and read it again. And before I got through it again, I was thinking about something else again before I got through that. And I'm thinking, my goodness, I've got 11 verses to read, and I can't even get through 11 verses without my mind drifting over here, something I need to do, or something I want to do, or something I need to look at on the internet, whatever it may be. And how easy is it for us to have our mind shifted? And it's, if we're focusing on God especially. If you're like me, now if I'm working on something I'm really into, if I'm down, cleaning the gun out or doing something like that, work that, I can stay pretty focused on that. But for whatever reason, if I get in God's Word, or if I'm trying to have a quiet time, it's if a pin drops somewhere in the house, I'm going, I wonder what that was. I'm sort of thinking, really? Any other time I wouldn't care what that was, because I'm doing something.
I'd say the devil's got a little something to do with that too.
Just a little bit, doesn't he?
Yeah.
The devil's so, and he knows us so well, doesn't he? He knows what pushes our buttons just enough to cause us to get off track. And we've talked about this at work several times. Trying to stay focused on a task. I read a Harvard study. It's been several years ago, and it was talking about cell phone usage, and it was basically targeting college students. Is where they did their study. And I can't remember the study group. It was a very large group over multiple states. And they were studying the effects. If someone was studying, and it was literature or history or something really exciting like that. But they gave the students a piece to read through and answer questions and stuff like this. And they start texting while they were doing that. They would pick up the phone, stop, and text back and set the phone down. Just a few minutes. And what they found was after they quizzed the kids and did all this, how they do their studies, I'm sure they had all this scientific way they went about this. But what they found was, even for a 5-minute text, or even less, just to read something and turn around and reply back, it took them like 30 to 45 minutes. I can't remember the exact numbers. It's been a while since I've read that. To get back to the same level of depth that they were before they stopped to do that. And I've heard several people, our girls, when they'd be studying, they'd have phone right next to them, like, phone needs to go somewhere else. They're like, oh, no, that's probably the reason I pulled the study up. Honestly, back then, it's like, see, I told you. But we have the same problem, right? If I'm having quiet time, I try to set my phone somewhere else because if it buzzes and, whether it's email or a text or some kind of notification, whatever it is, it'll be sitting on the desk and I'm over here, and if I hear it, I'm going, I'll try to keep reading, but it just draws me. It's like a magnet. You finally go, okay, what is it? and you sit and stare at it for a minute, and then it turns into answering 3 other emails and all this kind of stuff. The devil's so good at this. And that's what Solomon, I think, is getting into when you look in around verse 3. He's saying, we've got these things that pull us. The wine, he's saying, what's that effect on my body? What's the effect of other things on our body? What does it do to us in our mind? We shift gears. And again, it doesn't have to be bad things. Devil's pretty good at saying, well, that's okay. You're doing some good things here. You need to keep doing it. But sometimes we forget to ask God, is this what you want me to do? I know it's good, but is this where you want me? If it is, that's where I want to be. But I want to be where God wants me to be. And that's difficult for us to get into. Now, I think it's funny because we talk about, we many times, if you look through verses 4 through 8, and I'm bad to talk about this, in America today, we are extremely spoiled, right? I mean, we know that. Well, Scott's not, but everybody else is. You just get to do what Robin tells you to do, so you're but we get what we want, don't we? And if we can't afford it, we get it anyway. We go borrow money and get what we want.
And we can justify it.
Oh, yeah, we're pretty good about that, aren't we? Yeah, we can turn something into a need very quickly. It may start out as want, but it'll be a need by the time we justify it enough. that this is really going to make life better for all of us, for the whole family. If I buy a golf club or a gun or whatever it may be. But it's funny when I look back and you see this, and you see these verses here. In verses 4 through 8, what is he doing? It says he's built houses, planted vineyards, made a garden, planted every kind of fruit tree, constructed reservoirs, got servants, and all these kind of things.
He's building his kingdom.
Yes. It's a good thing we don't do that today. I years ago, and I've shared this with you all before, years ago I saw a bumper sticker on the car that said, the one who dies with the most stuff at the end still dies. And I thought, boy, how fitting for that, because it feels like we're in a race, isn't it? Whoever dies with the most stuff gets some kind of prize at the end, because we got all this stuff. We got, Lynn and I was going through our basement the other day trying to clean out some stuff. It's like, golly, where'd all this stuff come from? And it's stuff from years ago, and it's piled up here, and we think, okay, we'll do it. Okay. I should have said that to you, just
Let's keep going.
But we accumulate stuff that we think we need. And at the time, it may have served a purpose, but then it gets piled up and dust gets on it and blah, blah, blah. And that's what Solomon goes through here. Now, Solomon's king. So he has the means to do these things. So, again, go back to the lottery example. If you hit the lottery, what would you do with it? And I think, wow, Solomon, you might as well say, hit the lottery. Solomon's got any resource available to him, money, servants, all these things available to him. But he's trying to find happiness, and he's doing this as an experiment. Now, if you read in different texts on this, the one I have says first verse or verse 1 says, "I said to myself, come on and let's try pleasure, looking for good things." So Solomon is trying this as an experiment. He's trying to find good things. He's trying to find something, and he said the word good. He's trying to find good things to make him happy, to make life meaningful. So if you look at most of what he's done here, what he's amassed through this and what he says, it's not necessarily bad things. You know, he's created jobs. You know, he's created all these crops and all these fruit trees and all these orchards and things like that. And you think, wow, that's a good thing. You know, he got people jobs. He's got servants in his house. So he's got people employed. Da 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 da. Again, not necessarily bad things, but he allowed those things. He was looking for something in those things that didn't fulfill what he wanted to fulfill. And I think that's where we're at in society today. We're looking for these things. We're going through and trying to buy this. And we typically don't amass all this at one time, do we? You know, we didn't go out and buy all this stuff to take it downstairs and put in our basement. That was not the intent. But over the years, we bought this, and okay, the newness wore off of it, and it got shifted downstairs. And we bought this, and the newness, you know, it's a cycle. It's kind of like my tennis shoes. You know, it's one of the things I told somebody a long time ago. And guys, I know y'all probably do the same thing, so I don't want to hear you smirks. Okay? You know, you get a good pair of running shoes. They're really good to run with until they get dirty and they're starting to get worn. Then they get brought down to they're a household shoe to wear around the house, stuff like that. And then it turns into a garden shoe. You know, you go. So it goes through 3 cycles before it actually dies. And then it sits downstairs a lot longer before you actually throw it away, because that's a good pair of shoes and I hate throwing it away. You know, they're black and they, you know, everything on them because they've been used outside and they're green on the sides where you mowed in them. But that's my good shoes, you know, and when we argue, we want to keep them. So, you know, it's those things, you know, he did this over a period of time, looking for fulfillment in his life. What is that thing that's going to make me feel fulfilled when I go through my life? And if you look at the world's view of this, that's where we're at. That's what the world does, isn't it? Does the world have any way to add fulfillment without Jesus Christ in your life?
I think he recognizes through these passages that, or he's sharing with us that all of those pleasures are temporary.
Yes.
All of those things that you try through life, no matter what they're masked as, they're temporary.
Yes. For a short time, they make us feel good, don't they? But at the end of the day, think about it, at the end of the day, when you lay your head down and go to sleep at night, what really matters? And as you sit and ponder those things at 2 in the morning, you know, you think, what really matters in my life? And those are things you really look to be, to bring fulfillment in your life, is because you feel that and you see that. But the things that we think many times brings more heartache, doesn't it? You know, I got this nice, beautiful house. I mean, just in general. And then you start thinking about it and you think, roof's going to be replaced next year, my gutters are leaking, and you go through this list. How much joy does that really bring? Or does it just bring a whole lot of extra work? And then you start thinking, well, we got to pay electric bill, water bill, the taxes are going up, and we go through all these things. And before long, our house that we're so excited about has us going, oh my gosh, this house is costing us a fortune, it's wearing me out. I need to get something different. That will make me happy if I get something different. Maybe smaller, maybe bigger, whatever it may be. That's what's going to make us happy, because I'm tired of this. This is wearing me out. And I think it's what we get into. I do want to look very closely at verse 11, because I think he brings it all together in this. When I consider all that I accomplished, and I can see this, you know, even toward the end of our lives as we get older, even when I consider all that I had accomplished and what I had labored to achieve, the things he worked to get, I found everything to be futile and a pursuit of the wind. There was nothing to be gained under the sun. So through all this stuff, through everything he's told us he's done here, and if you look at this, most people say, I'll take that, right? If you look at all the things he said he's done here, if we could achieve that in our lifetime and have that as we approached our retirement years, or as we got into retirement, say, man, look at all I've got here, we'd probably take it, wouldn't we? I mean, if you think about it, that's a pretty good, in today's world, that's a pretty good thing to say, we've made it, we're successful. I've got all these things, and I've done all these things in my life, and people's going to look at me and say, man, that person really knew how to put things together. Great business person, great money manager, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, Solomon's looking at this and he's saying, I was chasing the wind. Through everything I was doing, I was just chasing the wind. You can't catch it. You can't get what is so elusive without God. What is most important when it comes down to it for us? If you think about what is most important, regardless of everything that's gone on in your life, when you're dealing with a hardship in your life, you've lost loved ones, you're dealing with things that's going on that may not be going your way, or maybe things that are going exactly your way. When you lay your head down at night, what is the most important thing?
Relationship with Jesus.
And the peace that comes with that in it. There is a peace. I'm telling you. And I know everybody in this room has probably experienced it at one time. And you know, I wish I could bottle this to where I could open it up anytime I want to and have this in my life. But there's those times where our relationship with God is so right that it just feels like the world is right for us. It's short-lived a lot of times because we allow things to come in and corrode that again. But for those moments of time, I think the Holy Spirit, through God, gives us moments glimpses of peace, that is true peace, that it don't make sense. I've been driving down the road before, and it just come over me that, man, this is just awesome. And it's not anything in particular. It's just the feeling of total peace, that everything's going to be okay. All the hardships, all the distractions, all the stuff that's driving me nuts. It may be at work, it may be at home, it may be with church, it may be whatever that is going on. He'll give us those glimpses of just total peace and a reminder that he's got this. No matter what is going on, is there anything God can't handle in our lives?
David, one of the things that, as you were reading that last verse, when I found myself not satisfied, I found myself searching.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings me back to a devotion that I read one time where God talks about us trying to win the race but without him, and how we have to slow down. And I found satisfaction being able to just slow down. It's almost like anybody's ever tried to chase a puppy. The more you chase the puppy, the farther the puppy gets away from you. But when you sit down and wait, it'll come up to you. Mm-hmm. And that's to me, it's likens to that.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Scott. It's so elusive we can't get it without God.
Yeah.
No matter what we think, we think these things, whatever that thing is going to be the thing that does it. And at the end of the day, and like I say, and I say it's a lot, when I lay down at night, I have to have peace in my life. If I'm going to sleep, I'm one of those, if something's troubling me, I don't sleep. Linda will tell you, I roll all over the bed. And half the time I'll get up and go sunroom and sit and try to read some scripture or something like that, just to get God, I need your help. To let me turn things over. It's not that God can't handle these things. It's the fact that we don't ask him to handle these things for us. We're trying to do them ourselves, aren't we? We're trying to fix these things ourselves, and we cause this angst in our life because we're trying to fix things that we don't have control of. And we allow them to consume us at times, and it becomes overpowering at times. And I think Solomon, as he went through his life and the things, like I said, a lot of his life was spent away from God. I think as he's gotten older, Solomon is looking back saying, wow, you know, here's some things I want to impart to you all. I blew it. You know, I had all this stuff that I was thinking was going to get me what I wanted. And now looking back, I realize it was just stuff. Stuff. You tell me where to go and what to do and how to react to it. And I'm going to try my best to do that. Start off your morning with a prayer like that. God is going to change your life.